This is hopefully going to be the last video I make talking about Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo. So far I've gone through my tab for the solo, how to play it, I've reviewed several tabs online and rated their accuracy, and I even critiqued my own cover of the solo, which unfortunately turned out to be substandard. My standard, of course, being perfection. I'm actually pretty tired to think about the solo, but there's one last video I feel like I have to make. One of the things that interests me the most is the many different ways people play this solo. There are hundreds of thousands of covers online and you'll find drastically different results. I'm not talking just about rearrangements or improvs, but honest attempts by people to pay tribute to Stairway. Now I know that not everyone is trying to mimic the exact same solo note for note, but I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of people are. And when they go to record their covers, they're doing it with the belief that they're playing something that sounds very similar to the original recording. And the reason for that is not so mysterious as it may seem. In order to know every single note of a guitar solo intimately, you have to listen to it over and over again, hundreds, thousands of times. You have to go second by second, beat by beat, and just rewind over and over again, meticulously comparing what you think is right to the actual recording. It takes weeks to do a project like that. I'm speaking from experience. Most people just have better things to do. They have other songs they want to learn, and they have lives they want to live. Luckily for us being people that are Led Zeppelin fans who want to learn how to play every note of Stairway perfectly along with the original record, I have no life. The majority of the time people go to learn a song, play a cover, even write a tab, they're just putting it together by ear, and as long as the end result sounds pretty close, it's usually good enough. And that's not good enough for me. I demand perfection out of my own work, so I was willing to dedicate my life, ended up being about 3 months worth, learning every note of every instrument, not just the guitars, in order to create a perfectly accurate tab. So with the knowledge I gained from that, I went back and started reviewing other tabs. It was disappointing how many mistakes those tabs contain. There's a ton of garbage out there, but sadly there are a lot of people learning from that garbage, thinking it's the gospel because they're beginners. Most people wanting to know how to play the song are beginners. And what they're seeing just it sounds close enough. But eventually these people are going to get good. They're going to start making videos and tabs and teaching lessons. And as long as they believe that what they're playing is correct because that's what they learned when they just started out, well, eventually you just end up with 1,000 different ways to play Stairway, even though we all have access to the same source material, the studio recording on Led Zeppelin 4. Because I love this song, and I believe it's one of the most important songs ever written, and thus must be documented accurately, I want to give everyone a chance to play it exactly as it was recorded by Jimmy Page. That's why I bothered to make these videos in the first place. Today what I want to do is go on YouTube, pull up a bunch of Stairway to Heaven solo covers, watch them, and discuss what's going right and what's going wrong. I want to gauge what percentage of people are playing it accurately and kind of try and understand where things are not coming together correctly. So let's jump right into YouTube. The first video that I want to play is one that is very important to me as well as the YouTube Led Zeppelin guitar solo cover community. This is Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven guitar solo cover by a user named June626, a Japanese guitarist. This was released in February 28, 2009. So this was pretty old school. This was back in the days of YouTube where the videos were mostly home videos that people were uploading of their families. Hopefully people don't do that anymore. You get a lot of DIY videos and just a lot of amateur stuff, a lot of sketches, sketch comedies that people would put together, and things like guitar covers. So this was a very early Led Zeppelin Stairway solo cover. I don't know if it was exactly the first one, but at the time that this came out, I remember it being considered the gold standard. I mean, we thought this was the most amazing thing ever recorded. It was played very well, and people thought that, this was never going to be topped. Like, this was the closest thing to Jimmy Page doing a YouTube video of the original Stairway recording. So let me just take a look in the comments, just because I want to show kind of what the sentiment has been for all these years. I mean, listening to a lot of people playing this lead, he is probably one of the few who can play it correctly. Good job. 6 years ago, 12 years ago. I mean, this was released 13 years ago, so this is a very early comment. June is the master of transparency. He has a Zen-like ability to capture a solo's vibe. He adds nothing that isn't there already. He's invisible. So, sentiment is pretty great. I mean, people really think that this is one of the greatest covers ever. So let's take a listen and see how it holds up. so right off the bat is one of the biggest mistakes that I have constantly pointed out throughout my entire solo series. So he does the classic mistake of playing the E instead of the F. Another thing he does is he doesn't bend up, he slides up earlier, so let me just show you that. That slide. So that slide should actually be a bend. But that one is less of an egregious error because it's hard to tell the difference in certain legatos unless you're paying attention really closely, or if you have video evidence like me. So that's not something that I really want to focus on. It's that E that I want to focus on more. So that was the note right there, where that white dot was. You're not supposed to play that, you're supposed to play one half step above. And it's a pretty egregious error. It's a common mistake that a lot of people make. We saw this in some of the most popular Stairway to Heaven tabs. So it's gone into recorded history. I mean, I hope that if you've been playing guitar for at least 5 years, you can tell the difference between an E and an F. But for a beginner, that might not be the case. So it makes a lot of sense why people would propagate this error. If you're young and you're watching this video to learn the solo and you're looking at his hands and the fret placement, that's how you end up playing an E. And I think that is one of the major reasons why mistakes get passed on from guitarist to guitarist when it comes to something as simple as, you know, one of the most dissected solos ever. So this section is another thing that I've dissected pretty closely. I know a lot of people like playing this passage on the 5th fret position, and you play it all the way to the 8th fret. The issue with that is when you get to the next part, kind of the ending to this lead, you have to jump up to the 12th fret, and it creates a pretty awkward and inefficient transition. You'll see it right here. That's a huge gap for someone to make, especially if you're a beginner. So it's actually much easier to play it the way that I like, which is you slide up to the 12th fret first and you play the entire passage up here in this 12th fret position. But as far as the notes go, they're pretty close. He makes a couple of minor misses here. There are some notes that need to be picked twice. There's a passage where a certain note needs to be picked back and forth. I don't have my guitar on me. I felt like it wouldn't be efficient for me to switch back and forth between me playing the part and just watching the video. But if you've seen all of my videos, you know the correct way to play it, so you can probably tell what he's missing. It's the position that I care a lot more than the actual notes themselves, and I just always recommend sliding up to the 12th fret and then finishing out the passage, and not playing that section down here in the 5th fret as he did. Let's take another look. So right there is when you should take your pinky and you should slide up to 12. Now that's a section that you probably think, like, why am I even bothering to talk about this? Like, this is the repetitive part. Everybody knows how to play this. I want to point out how well he plays it, like how cleanly he is playing this section. Most people don't do that. When they're bending up and releasing, a lot of the times people will accidentally hit the 3rd string and you'll hear the constant ringing of the open G in the background. This performance was incredibly clean, and it's actually not easy to do that. So that's one thing that I really commend from the way that Jun has played this. He has a very precise picking technique, and he does a really good job muting the strings that he doesn't intend to play. So that part was great right there. He holds all 3 notes and plays them together, lets them ring out. That's a very subtle effect that's hard to hear on the studio recording unless you're really going through it slowly. When I first learned the solo, I did not play it like that. I played on the 15th fret. I bent the 2nd string up, and I played both of those on the 15th fret, which makes it impossible for you to hold all 3 notes together. But even in 2009, he knew how to play it, so that's pretty cool. So that right there is the 1.5 step bend. And again, he does what I see a lot of people do, which is to choose it to play it down on this position. I'm not a big fan of that, and there's really nothing wrong with it. You can play the notes correctly, but I just feel like tension is a lot tighter the closer you are to the top of the fretboard. Whereas if you play in the middle like I do, which is on the 14th fret, it's a much looser. Like, it's just really easy to get those 1.5 step, 2 whole step bends, which you'll see because the very next lick contains that 2 whole step bend. And you can see that he's actually played it improperly because you're supposed to do a 2 whole step bend from the 6th fret if you're going to play down in this position. He instead plays a 1.5 from the 7th fret. Again, this is exactly how I learned how to play the section back in the day. I think when I was learning the song, it would have been around 2007 or so, and the tabs that we had online basically told you to play the solo like this. And that's probably how he learned it as well. And it's just unfortunate because you can really hear the difference. He's bending from 1 fret higher than he's supposed to, and he's not bending as high, which explains why people like to play down here. Because if you play it incorrectly like that, it's fine. But to do that 2 whole step bend from the 6th fret is actually incredibly difficult from this position. You can snap a lot of strings going that high because of the tension. I think it's much easier to play on the 3rd string up here on the 10th fret, which is how I like to tabulate it. But we're near the end, so let's see how he closes this one out. So no surprise there. Everybody gets the ending, right? There's no other way you could possibly play it. So my verdict on this solo is that no, this is not the most accurate version of Stairway to Heaven. And in reality, the odds are I probably learned how to play the solo from the same exact tab that he did. So I was playing it equally as incorrectly as he was right here. A lot of mistakes that he made are very similar to mistakes that I would make back in the day. So it's not anybody's fault, you know, it's really the fault of the materials. It's an issue with the tabs. So the lesson here is that you can't trust tabs. You can only trust yourself. You have to put in the work if you really want to play something 100% precise. And again, the other thing is, like, I can't get into his head. I don't know if he was going for 100% note for note solo, but from the fact that like 97% of this is accurate, I have to believe that he was. And it's just that the source materials that were available at the time were inadequate to provide someone with the ability to play that good of a version of the solo. I still think that this is a very good performance. The notes are not correct, so that means his accuracy is not that great, but his precision is incredible. His performance is incredibly clean. So I do enjoy that about this. There are a lot of performances out there that are not anywhere as close. So he did a very commendable job here. And the better part of this is not the only cover of Stairway that he's uploaded. In fact, he decided to revisit the solo quite a couple of years later. So this is June 626, Stairway to Heaven guitar solo cover, new version. This is January 22nd, 2017. Image quality, much better. This is probably recorded on a smartphone. And he switched his guitar out from a Strat to an SG. Now, as far as authenticity goes, the original Stairway solo was played on a Telecaster. So the Strat that he was using on the previous video was probably more authentic, although his tone, I will say, was not totally that good in the previous video. It was too warm, whereas Page's tone is 100% treble. So let's see how this version of the solo compares to previous. So, right off the bat, he has corrected his mistake. He has since, over the course of 8 years, learned that the correct note was on the 10th fret, not on the 9th fret. Obviously, I'm sure many people pointed this out in the comments, which is probably why he felt the need to do another version. As far as the tone goes, this is pretty great. It's pretty spot on, accurate to Jimmy Page's tone. Again, interesting because he's switching from a Strat to an SG when the original tone was original solos performed on Telecaster. But he must have gone and really put in the work to match that tone, because this sounds really close to what Jimmy Page did. He also fixed that slide from before. He correctly bends the note, so let's just play that again. So he also decides to play this lick in the position that I like to play it. So he decides to do that slide up to the 12th fret, and you can see here, whereas before he had to do a major jump from here up to the 12th fret, now that's completely eliminated. He gets a totally smooth transition, and this is probably just him developing, on his own part, realizing, hey, it's way more efficient if I just play the solo like this. Again, he's playing this section very clean. You can tell by the way he's picking. He's not really moving his picking hand that much. He's moving it just enough to get the note, and he's not releasing his fingers in a way that causes the string to ring out. But there is another comment I have to make about this section, is that when he plays through it, he's not quite getting his bends exactly to the pitch that he really needs to. Everything just seems slightly flat. So let me play that again just so you can hear for yourself. Even that last bend doesn't quite get there, and I actually can think of a couple good reasons for that. One, he's switched guitars, so he's probably used to playing those bends on a guitar that has like a different neck, like a Stratocaster. Fenders and Gibsons have very, very different necks. It's possible that his tension is much higher on this guitar, so he's used to pushing his fingers with a certain amount of tension to get those bends exactly where they need to be on the first solo, which the performance was great. This time it just seems like these strings are a little bit tighter and they're not quite getting to where he wants them to go. Same thing happened to me on my own cover, actually. I got my guitar set up and it came back with a slightly higher action than I had been playing on for 10 years, which actually made it quite difficult for me to do my performance on the cover. Normally, I could probably play the solo 100 times and not wear out, but I was having a very difficult time recording my cover without my fingers just going completely raw because of the extra tension that I wasn't used to. But so far, I think he's done a really good job. There are a couple of sections where, again, I think he's missing a note here or there, but there's really nothing blatant. And the decisions he's making as far as where he's playing the notes, like the positions on which fret, on which string, and how he's doing the legato, are almost exactly how I would do it. So this solo is kind of the opposite of the previous one. The notes are much, much more accurate. His accuracy is very high. The precision of the performance is not quite as good as the previous one, though. Even there, you could see like when he did that bend, the note was just kind of off time. So again, he's made another adjustment that is more in line with how I like to play the solo. He's moved this lick from down here on the 5th fret. He's now playing it on the 12th fret, which again, I feel like this is just a natural decision that a guitarist would make. I mean, if you're bending down here and it's really tight, naturally what you're going to want to do is just shift to the 3rd string where it's just not as tight. And yet, strangely, he still decides to do this final bend on the 2nd string. He is, again, correctly playing from the 6th fret, and he's trying to do a double whole step bend all the way to the proper note. But you can really see him struggle. Let's watch that again. And it's just the reason is just when you're down here, it's just a lot tighter, and you're trying to go 2 whole steps, which is pretty tough, especially on these types of guitars. I would just recommend playing on the 10th fret of the 3rd string. I think that just relieves a lot of these issues. So he's fixed a lot of his blatant mistakes, especially like the incorrect notes, and he's played in positions that I think are more efficient. Overall, I think that this performance of the solo is very, very close to how I would play it. You know, it's pretty similar to how I've tabbed it. So this is something that I'm really happy with. This is the type of performance that I want to see out of the other videos that I play today. If the majority of people play like Jun did in this video, that's gonna make me a pretty happy guitarist. The next video I wanna play is a pretty important video for me because this is the one that helped fix some critical issues in my solo when I thought I was done. I was pretty convinced that my tab of the solo was 100% accurate, and I decided to just listen to Stairway to Heaven isolated versions. This video right here, by the way, this 30-minute one, incredibly important as well. My tab would not exist if not for this video, because this has isolated versions of, you can see here, the drums, the bass, and I would not have been able to create my tab if not for this video. It's pretty great. I recommend everybody listen to it. But the video I'm talking about that really helped me play the solo correctly was this one. As a side note, you can see this solo down here, or this video down here. Let's learn the Stairway to Heaven solo properly. Pretty similar title to the video that I've released. This is a beginner lesson. You can see I've watched it. I actually left my own comments as to what I thought he did correctly and what he didn't. As far as the beginner Stairway lesson goes, I think that this is probably the best one that's out there. It's better than any tab. It's better than any other YouTube video telling you how to play Stairway. But is his performance proper? No. He makes a lot of decisions that I think are questionable, like, again, how he likes to play, like certain positions that he's playing some notes. And I think that there are some mistakes in this video. I don't want to cover it in this particular video. It's not really the scope of what I want to do here. But I do recommend everybody listen to this video, or at least watch it. It's pretty helpful. Really, the only one thing that I totally disagreed with him is that he says you need to swing this solo, which is just factually incorrect. The Stairway to Heaven solo is not swung. Instead, I think the most accurate version of Stairway to Heaven's solo on YouTube is this video right here. I don't think there's a better one until the cover that I recorded. So prior to my work, this to me should be the most popular Stairway to Heaven video out there, but it's not. Let's give it a listen. And hopefully from hearing this solo, you'll get a better idea of what in your head you should be listening for, because I think that this is pretty much spot on. So my first comment on this video is that the performance itself is not ultra clean. Compared to what we heard from Jun, this has a lot of string noise in the background. So that's one thing you kind of have to get over. But the critical mistake that was fixed in my tab from watching this video was somewhere around here. So right where I paused, there's two C's on the 13th fret that are played, picked back together. And in my version of the solo, I was only picking it once and letting it ring. In fact, one thing I didn't want to comment in the Jun video is that that's what he was doing as well. But this person, Morris Perry, correctly knew that you need to pick that note twice. So he did properly perform that section. And when I heard it, it kind of actually blew my mind, and it made me listen closer to the original Stairway recording, which is how I was finally able to pick up that, yes, Jimmy Page actually does very subtly pick that note twice. Now, there's a couple things that I do disagree with on the solo. I think there's two things that I would change, somewhere around here. So right there, he does that. Da, 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 da. So he does like a hammer-on almost, instead of da, 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 which is a bend. So that's one thing that definitely could be fixed. And then that bend right there, that, again, two-whole step bend, I think he plays it too fast. You know, you just kind of have to drag it out really slowly. But overall, he gives himself an A-. I don't know if that's a grade, but I would agree. I mean, I think an A- is actually a little harsh. I would give this an A, not an A+. The sad thing is, if this video had, if this had a video recording of him performing it and a backing track, I think that this would deserve to be the most popular Stairway to Heaven solo cover on YouTube. It's just really good. He's playing it exactly the way that it was meant to be played by Jimmy Page, with the exception of those minor subtleties that I pointed out before. So it's just kind of tragic that this only has, 47K views. I wouldn't have been able to create as good of a tab as I did if not for this video. But anyway, so let's move on. When I search Stairway to Heaven solo cover, this is the list of the most popular videos that come up. Look here, we got June 626, number 4 from the top. So he's still holding strong. I think that he should have probably more views than these other two. I've watched this one. This is the most popular one. I don't think this is very good at all. I think that there's actually quite a few deviations and mistakes, but they added an improv at the end and so on. So they were probably having a looser interpretation. Anyway, I have no interest in reviewing any of these videos, because the first thing you do in a reaction video is you take the most popular videos, the ones everybody else is reacting to. You also plaster your face, because the video itself is not important. When you're reacting, you got to make a stupid face for the thumbnails and so on. I don't want to do any of that. So in defiance of a standard reaction video, what I want to do instead is review Stairway to Heaven covers. And I'm instead going to sort this by date uploaded. I'm going with the most recent covers. And yeah, we're just going to take a look and see how people are playing the solo. So the first one right here, Stairway to Heaven solo cover, My Beginner Electric Guitar, Day 280. So this is someone who is documenting, I guess, documenting their journey learning how to play guitar, which is actually pretty brave and pretty cool. I've talked a lot about mistakes, people playing things wrong. I have never actually judging people's skill level, because that's a really foolish thing to critique. That's not my goal at all. There's going to be a lot of beginners covering Stairway, probably. Instead, it's always been about how people are playing the solo. Really, I'm trying to diagnose where the problem is, and usually I suggest I think that the problem is going to be tabs. So let's take a look. So let's stop halfway there. Again, the performance, clearly, this is a very honest beginner. Got his December 2021. So yeah. But I will say, as far as his decision making in terms of what notes he's playing, they're actually right. He is trying to play Stairway to Heaven correctly. So I'm very impressed by that. So that seems pretty familiar to me. I think he is going by the Ultimate Guitar version #1, like the most popular video on the most popular tab that's on Ultimate Guitar's website that I reviewed. It seems like he's pretty much playing it exactly as it was tabbed out there, which is good. If that's the source that you're using to learn the solo, that is a good starting place. There are much worse tabs out there, so as long as he keeps working at it and he keeps basically just grinding, getting your fingers stronger, getting more precise, playing with a backing track, because most people won't practice with the metronome, but they will practice at least to a backing track, and that's essentially the same, then I think he's in a good spot to eventually release a really good cover of Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo. I hope he follows up one day, maybe 5 years, 10 years down the road. So yeah, excellent job. So let's see what we got next. Stairway to Heaven solo, and I just continued. So let's see what solo he actually plays. I'm gonna not watch the continued part. Let's adjust for volume. So yeah, he is basically just sliding his way up the first string. It's interesting because I have never seen anyone do that. I've never seen anyone play it like that. I've never seen any tab write it like that, which means he's doing it by ear probably, which I can commend that. But it doesn't sound like Stairway because the legatos are just not right. Now I'm gonna have to, that was so wildly distracting, I'm gonna have to go back and listen just to make sure that the notes are actually correct. But you see something new every day. I've never seen this before, which is why I'm going to like the new videos and not the most popular ones, because you never know what you're gonna end up finding. So he played an E there instead of an F. So people are still making that mistake. Again, the solo has never been tabbed this way, so I think that he's just doing pentatonics, which is how people end up playing that E. Because F is not in E pentatonic. It is only in the minor scale and other scales. But so you did something pretty kind of awkward with the timing there, but now you see that. So you see the reason why I don't recommend playing that lead up lick in the 5th fret, because you can see that he had to jump and he actually ends up jumping onto the wrong fret. And that's exactly what happens when you decide to play down here instead of sliding up to the 12th fret. So let's watch that again. See, it's really awkward and he ends up on the wrong note. That's why I don't recommend playing like that. So he's rushing a little bit. I can tell that he's not like a total beginner like the previous video. I'd say he's probably somewhere in the 2 to 4 year range. Obviously, it depends on how much you practice. Are you practicing every day or not? So this is one of the things where you kind of have to, he has a backing track, right? So you have to listen to the music and slow down. You gotta play to the music. Don't think too much about the notes that are ahead of you. That's how you get to make mistakes. I mean, I messed up a lot. I've been playing for, let's say 15 years. And when I was trying to record my cover of Stairway's solo, I made so many mistakes because I was always trying to think of what was coming next. And there'd be blatant errors, like sliding to the wrong note, not bending up to the right pitch, and just sometimes just reverting muscle memory and playing something that was wrong instead of what I was supposed to be playing. So yeah, it's one of those things that people tend to rush, and always play slower than you think you need to play. I always keep that in mind. That part was really good. So he was able to pick it up. Some people that are in the super beginner range, once you get lost, it's like over. he was able to pick back from where he left off. So again, I thought that he played those in positions that I like. So that's great. I don't think that he's playing exactly what he needs to be playing, but again, some of that is timing. Again, he's like missing his cue and he's trying to catch up, and it just, tends to fall apart if you don't really stop and refocus yourself. At his skill level, I would recommend that you stop and you try it again, because I think he's capable of playing a clean version of the solo. Like, he can totally do it. But of course he might have had some really cool improv at the end that he wants to put on and document. Again, of course, most people are just doing this for fun, right? Nobody's trying to be perfect. And my goal coming into here was to really just examine how he was choosing to play. Everything except for that really intro where he slides up the first string seems fine. I thought that was pretty wild. I've never seen anything like that before. Again, I'm not really here to try and be the coach, but I'll give advice when I can. If somehow anyone ever finds this video, I don't expect to ever get more views than that. So in fact, he got 300 views the day after he posted this. So that's a lot better than me. It's a lot better than my engagements. So yeah, what we have so far is we have a solo by a total beginner, which is pretty true to one of the more accurate tabs. So that's pretty good, pretty happy with that. We have a solo from someone who is kind of nearing the end of beginner. I would consider him to be like an intermediate beginner. So he's not intermediate yet, but he's getting to that part. And for the most part, it wasn't too wild. Like, he's trying to play the right notes. And it's just that intro thing was totally wild. I've never seen that before. That was crazy. So let's see what this next one is. All right, so right off the bat, the first thing that interests me is whatever that is. I have no idea what that is. It might be a damper, which I wouldn't use because you need to ring out one of the open strings. The other thing is he's put the tab on the screen, which sadly my musical notation skills are not totally great, so I can't really interpret much of this except for maybe the legato element. It seems reasonable. I think he's playing the right notes, but the other interesting choice I think he's made is that it seems to me that he recorded this a cappella, like without any music or backing track, and then decided to sync it over a backing track. So that's an interesting decision. That's why things are kind of falling apart here for him, because he's playing to his own tempo, free form, which means that you rush, so you don't get help from that backing track. But as far as like what he's playing, again, so far I think that he's playing the right notes. And again, I think that's an even bigger indication that he was playing this without a backing track, because he's off. He gets off on, I think he falls down a fret, but doesn't actually pick up on it because he's not playing with music. So I always recommend, if you're going to record a cover of something, either play with music or play with a metronome. It's just going to make such a big difference. So So that is in the, so I'm excited about this because that's in the wrong position. So instead of moving up to the 17th fret and doing the triple notes, he played it the way that I would have learned how to play it when I was just starting out. And it makes sense why he would learn it like that, because he's not using tablature. He's using musical notation. So it's up to you to determine what you need to play correct, like where to play. And the tab is missing like a certain tie-in. So 1, 2, 3, you can see how this bend is propagated to the next note. Both of these notes need to be tied to this note right here. And they're not in this notation. So that's the reason why he's decided to play it in that. It makes sense if you don't know that all 3 notes are held together to play down here, because that's where you end up in the previous section. So again, a lot of tabs and a lot of notations have decided, instead of tabbing another bend, a 1.5 bend here, this one even puts like a rest here. But most people are like hammer-oning or doing like a slide when you really need to pull off a bend. Pull off is probably not a good word because it means something in guitar. So yeah, really, as far as playing goes, I think he would have been much tighter if he turned on his backing track. But it sounds like this was an a cappella performance. So if he learned the solo from this musical notation and not tablature, then I think that's pretty impressive, because again, notation doesn't tell you where to play. So you have to figure it out for yourself. It's not like the other scenarios where you're, looking at someone else's tab and just copying it. So it's a lot of hard work to learn music this way, which is why most of us guitarists are musically illiterate. So it's nice that he's going with this approach. Really, the only thing I would suggest is playing with the backing track. But he's not a professional musician doing it just for fun, which is perfect. That's exactly what you should be doing. Even though it's Ray, I played with the real partition, not the tab. Yep. So yeah, that's how you end up yourself in these ruts where you don't have enough clues from the notation to tell you where to be playing. So let's go to this one by Michael Page. So he's using one of the other tabs. He's using the not the most popular one on Ultimate Guitar, but I think like one of the later versions. I think it was version 4. And he's bringing in all the mistakes that come with version 4. So he did that, so that slide from 8 to 10, and then he played the E. So this is exactly the video that I want to actually like highlight as what I consider to be going wrong with Stairway covers. Because this guy's a good guitarist. I can tell already he's like pretty skilled. He's probably intermediate or maybe even advanced. So he's probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 year range. He's playing very precisely. He's just playing the wrong notes. Again, this is not, I don't think that this is his fault. I think that this is the fault of the materials that are available. The tablatures or whoever's out there teaching him how to play this solo, he's not learning from the right materials. So this is exactly the type of video I was looking for. For the other players, they're not as advanced. So, I'm not here to criticize people's playing abilities. That's just kind of a pointless thing to do. What I do want to point out is, like, when experienced guitarists are not playing Stairway to Heaven correctly, just because of kind of this atmosphere of believing internet tabs are perfectly, are the gospel. That's how you end up in this situation. So again, he did the same exact thing. He goes down to 3, slides up, and then he has to do a jump. But again, I can tell that he's a pretty advanced guitar player because he doesn't have that huge delay when he goes from down here to up there. It's pretty smooth, but you don't have to do that. So he lost his place at the very beginning of that, but he picked it up really quickly. So again, that's just another example of like his skill level, that he's able to follow along with the track, whereas the previous two that we heard kind of lost their place and just were not able to really get back to where they needed to be. Okay, yeah, so that is the, he plays that incorrectly as well. I think I talked about this when I was reviewing the tabs. I can't remember which one it was. I think it might actually be Ultimate Guitar Tab 1 that has this lick tabbed incorrectly. It goes EDE instead of EGE. That was super interesting. So he played this section correctly, the 14th fret, you know, the 12 to 14 bends, and then he played the bend on the G. Like I've always been saying over and over and over again, how every other guitarist, you know, June and so on, go down to the 5th fret, and then they force themselves to do a very huge, difficult bend before closing out the pentatonics. And the reason I believe people do that is because you don't have to play the pentatonics with your pinky. The way that I play it, you bend up on the 10th fret and then you close out the lick with your ring finger and your pinky. But he's actually found a creative way to mix the best of both worlds. He bent from the 10th fret and then jumped down and closed out the pentatonics. I think that's a pretty neat way of doing it. I've never thought about doing it that way. It never crossed my mind until I've seen this. So that's pretty neat. But again, I don't recommend jumping up and down like that. You know, I've criticized it previously before because it just creates room for error. Like you're more likely going to make mistakes and hit the wrong note, go to the wrong fret, and so on. So like my advice is strengthen your pinky. If you can't play, you know, pentatonics, there's two things you can do. You can just avoid using your pinky for all of eternity and come up with these creative solutions to not use your pinky, or you can actually just strengthen your pinky. So that's what I always recommend. Okay, so that was pretty cool. There were a couple of new things that I haven't seen before, but as far as the majority of that performance, I don't want to play this. As far as the majority of this performance here, I think he's pretty much copying one of the tabs note for note, just like the very first video. You know, you can't go wrong copying a tab if you're using the right tab. I think that this player, Blues Fang, was using a very good tab, and thus the notes he was trying to play were accurate. And one day when he gets to the skill level of Michael Page, he will be playing a very good cover of Stairway to Heaven solo. But I think Michael is working with a poor source material. I think if he plays, I mean, again, he's pretty skilled, right? He's probably, I would say, around 4 to 6 years now that I've watched the entire solo. So if you know, you just gave him an accurate tab, like, you know, my video, or if he just got Guitar Pro and downloaded my tab, in like 3 days, he'll be playing a really good cover, something on the same level as June 626's, you know. So he's playing well, he's playing guitar well, he's just playing a couple of notes that are not true to the original studio recording. And that's exactly the type of video that I was looking for today, and I'm glad I found it. So let's move to the next one, the Guitar Man Sam. I can already tell he's probably going to do a little loose interpretation because I think he seems like someone who knows how to play guitar. Also, the reason I actually paused was not to comment on the fact that he played that extra note on that first lick. It was a comment on the fact that he's playing a Telecaster, which is the correct guitar, but he is not matching Jimmy Page's tone at all. He's using the neck pickup of the Telecaster, whereas Jimmy Page was riding the bridge pickup really hard. So he has a very warm tone instead of that like cracked tone that June 626 had on his second video. So, you know, interesting choice. Let's just play it again because I paused at an inopportune time. So that's another E. So another guitarist playing the E that's not there. What should we call it? The Phantom E? I think the Phantom E is a great nickname for that note. And again, right there, he kind of loses his place, and I think the only reason he loses his place is because he's jumping up like 6 frets from the 5th position all the way up there to where you need to be. Completely avoidable if you're playing it in a more efficient position, which we've already highlighted before. So So he's taking a lot more liberties, which means I can't really judge this video. I think he's just jamming out. So this dude's having a good time. Skill level wise, I think he's around the same skill level as Michael Page. He's also just playing a little more loose. What I liked about the Michael Page solo is that it was incredibly tight. So, you know, and you can tell from the stances, like he's playing super stiff. He's wearing almost a turtleneck. So, you know, he's like one of those, you know, machines. And one day he's just going to be like super technical, shreddy on the spot kind of guitars, which I like. You know, some people criticize that, but I like that. He's pretty much the complete opposite. He's rocking out. He's one of those like soul players, which I've always hated when people criticize guitar solos for like not having soul or whatever, because that's just really all about tone. It has very little to do with somebody's playing ability. But this I also like. I like both interpretations of guitar playing, but yeah. Yeah, he's just having a good time. But as far as some of the issues from before, again, he's playing the E, our favorite Phantom E, and he's playing the that kind of slide up lick, let's call it that, in a position that forces him to jump, and it caused him to actually lose his place and make a mistake. Let's just play it again, just because this is one of the things that I really want people to catch on. As we saw, June626 in his first video, he played like this. On his second video, he did not. So you can see the two versions. Let's see, I think it's right, let's say probably right about here. Yep, so you can see he lost his place. You can hear one of those little like, I think he might have picked the wrong string. So you hear kind of like the open G there. And yeah, again, it's just the consequence of you're putting yourself in a position where you're playing less efficient. I want to see this solo cover with double neck. Let's do it. So again, this is one of the taps. So he's doing the, instead of bending, you know, da, 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 like playing the A and then bending up to the A, he's doing the da, 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 slide. He's sliding from G to A, which is incorrect, and then he's playing the E, the Phantom E. And that was one of the tabs that's online, and it's just not a good tab. All right, so he played that section, he slid up to the position that I like, but he also took a lot of liberties. So again, this is not one of those situations where I can really say like, oh, he's not playing it right, because I think he's actually intentionally playing his own thing, which people do with covers. It's not, you know, it's out of the scope of this video. That's not the point I'm trying to make here. So let's just play through the rest of this and see how it goes. So again, so that's one of those things. I don't think that's a liberty. So like I can kind of tell when someone's making like an improv liberty and when they're trying to play what they think is Stairway. And again, he plays in the 12th fret position because it's sensible to do that if you're not listening super close and picking up on the fact that Jimmy Page is playing 3 strings and you have to actually jump up to the 17th fret. Yep, and he did the hammer on instead of the bend. That was really cool. I actually like that. And he's playing it in the position that I like. So I think his bass is one of the tabs that I didn't like as much. If you recall, I liked Ultimate Guitar tab version 1. I like the Songster play along tab. It's one of those, like, it's kind of like Guitar Pro. And then I think I liked Stairway version 4. I think the one I didn't like was version 3 because version 2 is the live solo. So version 3 is the one where the tabber purported to have copied it from the official Led Zeppelin tab, like published physical book, but actually just made a ton of mistakes, and especially near the end, and they just gave up and didn't tap the last couple of lines. So if that tab is your bass, then you're in a really bad spot. Again, I think the Ultimate Guitar and the Songster tabs are really good sources to get like 99% there for Stairway. And of course, at the very end, I do recommend my videos and my Guitar Pro tab as the closest to what you're supposed to be playing if you want to match Jimmy Page, which again, he's not trying to match Jimmy Page, but there are certain elements of Stairway to Heaven solo that are standard, that should be played in a certain way, and I can see that, you know, he also hasn't been doing them. But I do think that his improvs have been really cool. Sadly, because this is a short, I can't pause and like rewind and go back to highlight certain areas, so we just have no choice but to listen to this all the way through. All right, so now my recording is at the 1 hour mark. Obviously, when I edit this down, it's probably gonna be much less than that, and I kind of want to keep going, so I'm just gonna go until I get bored. This might be a really long video that's super weird. And somebody's car alarm is going on in the background, so that's why I paused there. And it's probably a video that's super weird because I just make weird videos. That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm gonna do today. So this is another interesting take on this section. So instead of, he pretty much does the opposite of bending, like anything but bending. He's doing a lot of hammer-ons for the legatos where he should be bending. I can also tell that his skill level is probably within like the 1 to 3 year range. Like he's been playing more than 1 year, but probably less than 3. He did the slide though. He's playing it in the right spot. So he's a little bit ahead, and he's not like trying to get back to where he is. So he probably doesn't realize he's ahead. So that's another indication of skill level. He is playing to the original track. Again, this is what I don't like about when people play along with the original track, because they kind of both blend together, especially since he's off by like a note. Like he's off perfectly by a beat, which then makes it really hard because it all just kind of blends together. So up until that end part, I liked all the positions he was in. So he did the proper slide up. He played the 3 notes together on the 17th. He did the bend on the 12th. And then And again, there's some things that aren't totally, spot on. I can't tell if it's the tab or if he's just losing his place and he's trying to pick back up, which then, obviously it usually ends up getting you in an even worse spot. But he does stop and shift, at the start of each line, he's in the right spot. But you can see here at the very end how much he struggled to play that bend, because it's just a tough position to bend up, 2 whole steps from. So I would say that this is comparable to the very first tab. He's probably somewhere in the beginner level, but he has a pretty good source. Like whatever he's using to learn Stairway to Heaven is probably pretty good. And he'll get there. He just needs to, again, put in the work, grind, work on those fingers, keep playing with backing tracks, metronomes, so that you get a much, much tighter performance. And I think he's going to be in a good spot. Again, these 2 more experienced guitarists were making much more like blatant errors when it comes to just playing notes that aren't there. Obviously, these 2, they're making real errors, but it's a matter of their skill level, which is not the point of this video. So the point of this video is how you approach playing Stairway to Heaven. And again, the real mistakes that I want to hone in on were seen in these 2 performances here. So let's go to Dan Wolf. So I think that was right. Again, I can already tell that he's probably uncomfortable playing with his pinky, because he did something really interesting. He bent the 8 on the 2nd string up, and then he used his pinky to play the 1st string, but then instead of bending with his pinky on the 1st string, which is probably not strong enough, he jumped to his ring finger. So we're probably going to see a lot of uses of avoiding the pinky again. Also, this video is too short. I don't think he's going to play the solo all the way through. All right, so an abrupt ending. We didn't quite get all the way there, but again, it's promising. I think he's probably around 1 year. I'd say, again, the first guy was like 6 months in, so he's probably between 1 and 2 years. Very similar skill levels between the 2 of them, as well as this guy. But so far, I think he's kind of on the right track. Again, maybe I'm getting bored. Let's see how many more videos I can last. So we got J Soundcheck 91. Ooh, nice. Oh, I thought he was left-handed, but no, he's in reflection mode, unfortunately. So that was completely out of the blue. So that is a total unique interpretation of that opening line. I think that most people know how to play the opening line, so I expect that there's going to be a lot of improv in the solo. And that was a Phantom E right there. Yeah, so I think he's definitely going in with a mindset of jamming out. Maybe that this is the way that he likes to play the solo, but he's totally not going for 100% authentic. So that's totally fine. That's not something to be critical about. So very inauthentic performance, but it depends on what his mindset is. So either it's very possible that he just learned this entire thing by ear. That's an option, which is cool. If he's one of those guys that, thinks tabs are worthless, that I'll never learn anything by tabs and I'm just going to learn everything by ear, I'm totally down with that. I think that's a good approach. I don't think he's using bad tabs because he's taking a lot of liberties. Another option is that he knows how to play Stairway, like he has a great bass for it, and he just decided to hit record and just play whatever he felt like, which is cool too. I think he's a pretty skilled guy. He's probably on the same skill level as Michael Page, definitely on a technical standpoint. I didn't see him making a lot of mistakes or playing out of time. So that's probably somewhere around 5-10 years, This one is interesting. Is there a video? Yes, there's a video. Okay, I was fooled by the cover into thinking that this would be like that other video I showed, the super accurate performance where it's just audio only. But I think anyone who's doing an audio only video, you're kind of limiting yourself to, how popular your video is going to be. So let's see how this one goes. All right, let's get this. So zero use of the pinky. It seems he might as well cut that pinky off because he has already shown that he's not going to be willing to use it at all. And it's probably going to screw him up later. So exactly as I predicted, he plays the passage the way that people who don't use their pinky plays the passage, and then he has to go into a big jump, which causes him to not exactly get where he wants to go. So there's a little bit of a slight mistake there. So again, the recommendation, always just work on using your pinky. It's a pretty essential tool in any guitarist's skill set. So a couple interesting things there. He lost his place during the repetitive section, but he was able to get back on, which is not easy. But then he jumped the gun going into this riff, and he came in a little bit early. So we'll see if he gets back in position. As far as skill level, I'll say he's a little bit more advanced than the previous, kind of beginner level guys we saw. I'd say he's around 2 to 4 years, probably close to 2. So far I think he's actually playing the solo fairly, he's not playing the wrong notes. It's just a matter of not handicapping yourself really by not using your pinky. So there, he does the right thing. He goes up to the right position, and this is a position where you have no choice but to use your pinky. And it's very likely because he never uses it, it's going to cause you some issues when you have to use it. So just more reasons why the pinky is an important tool. So yeah, again, what you need to do is obviously your index finger is on the 12th fret, right? So you need to bend up from the 12th fret pretty high. I can't remember what exactly it is now. But most people, including me, don't have the dexterity to do really high bends of the index finger. So what I always do is I shift down and I use my ring finger, which is really strong. I've seen other guys from these covers so far shift down and use their ring finger to bend up. And those are all options, but hammer-ons are not an option. Playing a hammer-on is incorrect, so... So he went for the Michael Page solution. That's very interesting because this is the second person I've seen do that. He goes down and he bends the 10th fret with his ring finger, which is the right note, and he tries to bend it up to the right spot. He almost gets there. I think he can work on his finger dexterity a little. And then he shifts gears and he jumps down to finish the pentatonics. Again, because if you're not using your pinky, you have to do it here. while Michael, of course, being much more skilled, probably, close to the 7-year mark, I would say. Again, the range I gave was 5 to 10 because you don't know how much someone is practicing. He was able to do a very, very smooth transition down to close out those pentatonics. Here, you could see a bit of a crawling action. Let me go and replay that again. And he doesn't quite get on the right spot, so he's about a fret off as he starts those pentatonics. What he could have done was just completely shift his hand down. You could probably incorporate a slide to get into those pentatonics to make it easier if you're going to play it this way. But for the most part, I think he's again on the right track. Just a couple more, well, a lot more practice. And I think, again, he'll get there. There were a couple of things that I did like at the beginning. Kind of the first half of the solo is exactly how I'd play it, except he just wasn't doing his bends. And then in the second half, there's some deviations from the way I play it, but completely predictable, Anytime I see someone not using their pinky from the very beginning, because this is a very pinky-involved song, anytime I see someone just, curl their pinky in like that and not even approach the fretboard, I can kind of already tell how they're going to play the rest of the solo, as I suspected. So this is really just confirming a lot of the things I was talking about in the previous videos, where I was wondering why people made certain decisions, and now I'm seeing it for real. So yeah, this is the confirmation. This is the reason why I decided to make this video in the first place. And again, that was another reason why you shouldn't play down here in the 5th position. If you play it my way, you're gonna end up here on the 10th fret, and the jump up to 17 to close out the solo is much shorter. So by not using this pinky because it's too difficult, and going down and playing pentatonics with your index and the ring, you're putting yourself in a position where the ending of the solo is much more difficult now, because you've got to go from the 5th fret all the way up to the 17th fret. That's an entire octave to close out the solo. So that makes it even worse. Whereas, again, my advice to this guitarist, what's his name? Guitar covers rock and metal. Use that pinky. Just work on it, drill it every day, and you're going to make your life a lot easier. So we got Gil Carrazzo, Salt and Pepper Hair. So I'm expecting something pretty great here. That is so fascinating. So he played that exactly like this guy. He did the whole slide up on the first 2 strings or first string or whatever. I don't know what he's doing. I've never seen that in a tab, so I don't know where these guys are learning that. I mean, I'm gonna assume that they're not from America, so it may be possible that whatever, if you're in the US and you search Stairway to Heaven guitar tab, you're gonna get a certain search result. But if you're in a different country and you're searching Stairway to Heaven guitar tab, you might end up with something different. So maybe there's a video, YouTube in whatever country that they're learning from is telling you that's how you play it. Or maybe this guy, Decia, sorry, that's probably how you pronounce that. Maybe you learned it from this guy. Because that's certainly a hell of a way to play that. It's the least efficient way. I mean, if you just keep your hands on the 5th fret, you bend the 8, and then you pinky the 8, and then you bend the 8 with your pinky. That's all you have to do. Instead, I mean, this is so overcomplicated because you're sliding all the way up to probably 15, and then you got to go back. And he's playing a Phantom E. This sounds almost identical to what that other guitar player was playing. So they're probably from a very similar region, and they somehow end up with the same source material for Stairway to Heaven. Now you can see him struggle right there. I keep pausing too early. You can see how much he struggled to get down. So my initial estimate of what this video is going to be has not been satisfied. But again, I don't think it's a matter of his guitar playing skill. I think it's a matter of his positional choices. If he played the solo in a much more sensible position, he wouldn't be making mistakes like the one you're going to see. So he holds that note too long and he's late, and he doesn't even bend like you're supposed to. So I just want to pause here to say, like, earlier I talked about the other guitarists that were taking liberties. And I said that you can tell when somebody's intentionally taking liberties on a solo, and you can tell when they're not. And again, I think that this guy's trying to play a very authentic Stairway solo. And because of these choices that he's making on where he's going to play certain passages, he's not putting himself in a position to play a clean version of the solo. And he's doing this on the wrong time. Like, he's off by a quarter note. He did a really great job there. He also did a great job on the previous lick. Other players have played these past two licks incorrectly, but he actually played them really good. Again, that is really odd. He plays down here on the second string and then decides to slide it all the way up. Actually, no, that's not odd. There's a very good reason for that. Because if you're playing on the second string, you have to bend really high up to get to this note. So it's easier to slide up to that note because the tension is much tighter, as I've repeated many, many, many times, which I'm going to do probably a lot more in this video. Again, if you do it on the 12th fret, the distance, just look at how short the frets are, right? The reason I explained in a previous video that I didn't explain in this video is if you're down here and you're trying to bend 2 whole steps, you have to go a longer physical distance. So you have to move this string a much larger distance than if you're up here, and 5 frets up here is a much shorter distance, and it just requires less tension on your finger. So you can correctly play the bend instead of having to resort to something like sliding. Yeah, again, that was an interesting choice. So he does the correct bend the way that I would do it, but then he slides down to 5. But instead of playing like 5-7 and then playing that string, he slides up. So he really likes going up and down the fretboard. He may be more of a single string minded player, which is something that I do when I play bass. So I wonder if he actually has background in bass, because that's what I do a lot. And when I play bass, I stay on the same string. And it seems like he's more inclined to do that, which of course we know is inefficient. That's why guitars don't have one string, because it's nice to go up and down the fretboard, across it, as opposed to up and down, rather. Something interesting happened there. So he was off time on that final bend, and one of the things that people do is, you want to make that final passage spot on, so you actually pause and you cut off your lead early so you can get up there and play that right. But I think because of the fact that he has introduced so many inefficient motions into the way that he's played, he ends up in a bad spot. Actually, no, it's not as bad as I thought it was. I thought he started off time. He actually started on time. He actually just kind of lost it in the middle, which is not a problem. But this one, I'm a lot more critical on this solo. And I think the reason is because there's so much with the way that he's playing that's inefficient. Did he play? Yeah, he played a Phantom E. So again, I don't know if there's a tab out there that's telling people that you need to like slide up and down the fretboard so wildly, but he's the second guy that played that opening passage that way. And if there is a tab out there that's, telling people to do this, that's really what I'm critical about. I'm not really attacking the players here. You know, I'm trying to figure out where they're coming from, and really, if there's a bad source out there, that's what I want to find out. I want to ask all of these people, like, where did you learn how to play Stairway to Heaven? And also, there's a couple of videos you can check out if you really want to play it like Jimmy Page. All right, let's see who's next. Ricky G. How foolish I am. This is an acoustic guitar cover. He's also playing at a much slower tempo, but this is a rearrangement, so I'm just kind of an idiot. Not Ricky G. All right, so who's next? This is an acoustic guitar cover. All right, so we are going to skip that, and we're going to go with Roby Blues. Again, this is exactly one of those tabs. So he does that slide and he plays the Phantom E. So I can tell exactly where this is gonna go. Again, this is just one of those tabs on the internet. I don't know how you get to Ultimate Guitar and you don't use version 1, because version 1 is pretty much spot on, except for a blatant mistake, you know, later in the solo. How do all these people end up learning from not version 1? And there is actually a good explanation for that, because people copy the tabs from Ultimate Guitar and they put them to other websites. And if you copy the version 1, you're easily going to get caught, and people are probably going to call you out for stealing version 1. But if you take a less popular version tab and you repost it on your website, that's less likely to be caught out. So it may be that Ultimate Guitar is not the most popular website from wherever these guitarists are from, and when they search Stairway to Heaven cover, the first solo they get, the first tab they get, is the one that's telling you to slide and play that Phantom E, which hurts. It really hurts. So that was played not right either. And I'm pointing that out as opposed to the others because I don't want to repeat myself over and over again. Obviously, I'm getting a little bit tired. But the mistake that he made there was not exactly the same mistake as the one in Ultimate Guitar version 1. He kind of just goes up and down the pentatonic. So there may be some liberties being taken here. I think there were some similar kind of pentatonic-ish misses. Which again is typical of people that are playing the Phantom E, because it's a sign that players only know the pentatonic scale and nothing else, which makes it very difficult for them to play anything that's not pentatonic, aka Stairway to Heaven. That's interesting. So Michael, I'm trying to forget his last name, correctly, very accurately bent the 10 and just shifted down. This guy did something almost identical to this player. He plays the 10, he bends it up, and then does this crawling motion down, which is just totally wrong. You end up playing like the 6th fret and the 4th fret, or sorry, the 8th fret and the 6th fret. And those notes are just not correct, so you can see that again. So yeah, again, I think a lot of this is, you know, it's more the tab and not the player. Some of it, of course, is the player. I think that his playing was tight, so I think he's probably early intermediate, I would say. Maybe 4 years, and he plays, I think, with a metronome. This is the kind of player that practices because he's pretty tight. He's more so, his mistakes are more so playing the wrong notes, like the notes that he doesn't intend to play. And also when he makes those big jumps, he's not exactly getting in the right spot. But again, those things get fixed with time. His actual precision, his timing is actually pretty good. All right. Let's see what we got here. Kill 'Em All, best album. Okay, so there it is. This is 3 players in a row. Now, I can say that they're not from the States, probably. You have 2 Spanish names. But this guy does not have a Spanish name. So somehow he is ending up with the same tab or guitar solo lesson that is telling people to play that line as inefficiently as possible, because this is blowing my mind. I've never seen any tabs up, or anyone up until today, I've never seen anybody play the solo like this. And yep, ends with the Phantom E. So he gets off timing here. I'm gonna say that the way that he's playing is almost identical to this guy, except I think he's a lot tighter. I think this guy's, I would say he's solidly intermediate. Again, not as good. So far, I think the most technically skilled player that I've come across is Michael Page here, which is interesting because every now and then you get somebody who's like a total pro, like 20 years, 30 years doing a Stairway cover, but it doesn't seem like we had anybody at that level do it yet. But the point is he's off timing here. Oh, so he just decided to do that bend with his index finger. That's pretty bold. He looks like he's got strong fingers. Well, let's just watch that again. So he took the crawling to the next level. Again, he's bending on the 10th, which I'm happy to see a lot more people doing. I was assuming going into this video that most people would be bending down here on the 6th. He's bending up on the 10th. And instead of doing that weird crawling that we saw the other guys do, he just decides to do some legato hammer-on playing, which is, I guess it's a great liberty if the tab that you have is telling you to play, like, to stretch out your fingers, like all the other players were trying to do and missing. And he just decides, you know what, I'm just going to incorporate these legato elements, do some hammer-ons and pull-offs to get myself in the spot that I need to. So that's pretty cool. So as far as the liberties that he's taken, I think that they're all great. Like, he's taking liberties that still stay true to the original solo. So I like this one a lot. I like this cover, except for that thing. Like, I don't know, I'm learning about a new way to play Stairway, which, man. Okay, so next one, Julia. So this is the first. Ooh, we got 2 girl covers back to back. And in fact, we're already at the 2-month mark. I was not expecting that. I kind of expected people to, like, I don't know, upload Stairway to Heaven guitar solo covers every single day. And it seems like one day, these were from yesterday, a week ago, 2 weeks ago. It seems to be like a 2 videos a week kind of thing, which is, I don't know, that's a little bit sad. I was thinking that there'd just be a billion videos. So let's do let me put a cutoff point. How many more of these do I want to do? I guess I'll do the 2 girl covers, and then to kind of balance it out, I'll do this guy, and then call it a video. Let's see how this one goes. So for the most part, she's playing correctly. I think it's pretty clear off the bat that this is very much a beginner guitarist. She's probably a multi-instrumentalist, so guitar is probably not her first instrument. I think she's playing, as far as the notes go, she's playing the right thing. The timings are a little bit off. Again, she's doing the slide up. So it's probably one of the other Ultimate Guitar tabs that I didn't like that she's using, which is unfortunate, but I don't think she played a Phantom E. And it does seem like she's using her pinky, so she's on the right track. Yeah, so she seems really fresh to the game. She's probably at the same skill level as the first video we saw, like somewhere around 6 months, possibly even less. But the amount of pinky use I'm seeing is something that I'm very happy with. I'm going to go ahead and guess that she actually is a piano player, and so the guitar is not her first instrument, because I don't know of a lot of players that jump off right off the bat in the first year and use their pinky as much as I'm seeing her play. So that makes me pretty happy. So I was pretty happy with everything up until now, and this brings back a lot of painful memories for me, because the way that she played this lick is exactly how I played for, let's see, when did I make my tab? I made it last year, so 14 years I played Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo incorrectly. So, I've been somewhat harsh on a lot of these videos, but really all I'm doing is bringing out the faults that I saw in myself. It's like really the pain and disappointment, finding out, many, many years later in my life that I'd been playing Stairway wrong the whole time. And again, that was a big motivator for me to make this video. And this just brings back a lot of memories. I think this might be the first time I've seen someone play it like this. Maybe not. Maybe I think somebody else. But because she's also a beginner, that makes me sad. Because she's working with a tab that doesn't tell you exactly how things need to be played. It may be possible, like the other guitarists, she's learning off of musical notation. I don't know if any of those say Stairway to Heaven on them. But in that case, that means she has to figure out the notes for herself, which is much more difficult. That ending was very similar to many of the recents. I'm not surprised that this is the thing that's played most differently to the way that I like to tab it. Most people play up here on the second string, do that bend, and they play the pentatonics. I'm surprised most of the people that I've reviewed today haven't been doing that, because typically that's what I would assume that, like, I don't know, 50% of players at least play it that way. It seems like today, most of the people that I've reviewed have been bending the 10 and then awkwardly, like, dancing their way down to the pentatonics and doing a bunch of weird stuff. I think she would benefit a lot from my tab, because she's willing to use her pinky, and if she just had that source telling you to bend and play on the fourth string with your ring and your pinky finger, it would be a lot more efficient, because now she's going to have to jump all the way up to the 17th fret from down here. So let's see how that goes. So very bold decision there to slide up continuously, because you really have to land on the right note. If you don't land on the right note, you're a fool. So I don't recommend sliding from the 5th fret all the way up to the 17th fret. It's a dangerous maneuver if you don't get it. but it's a bold move. She did end up there. I can see that overall, finger strength doesn't actually seem to be too much of a problem for her. It's really just speed. And of course, that's the easiest thing to get good at. So I think in about a year, she's probably going to be playing this really good. I think she's off to a good base. All right. Next video by Larissa. This is a viral video, 1.4 million views. Let's check it out. Oof, I had such good expectations because the intro was very good. She actually did the bends the way that you're supposed to, and then plays a Phantom E. So everything up until now was great. Again, except for the Phantom E. It seems like, that's off to a good track. It seems, I think she's a pretty, again, average skilled player. I would say intermediate. She's playing a lot better. Definitely better than more than half the people I've reviewed so far. I'm surprised I really haven't seen a video from someone that's a super pro. And it seems like she got here off time, and it's probably going to carry through. But up until now, I think the performance has been great. So let's see how this rides out. Let me just back up a little, because you can hear how things go from good to being off pretty quickly. So there you can see it. She was off time basically the whole way until that very end, where she held one of her bends longer than needed and then got back on time. So I hope that this isn't how she's normally playing the solo, because that's just not right. And but she was able to get back on time, which is, again, something that an intermediate level guitar player would be able to do. So let's hear that again. So that bend at the end was held for much longer than it normally would be to sync everything back on time, because she was off by pretty much a whole quarter note. So notes were again played correctly, but the only thing she didn't do is she didn't hold all three of them down. So you need to bar the index finger, hold the bend, and then hold the other two strings down. And that, again, that's a matter of what tab you're looking at. Another thing I'm pretty surprised by, most of the guitarists I've seen have played this section correctly up here on the 17th fret, so that's a nice surprise. And again, the bends are good, but the ending is not a hammer-on. The ending is a very, very slow bend from the 12th fret, and I think maybe only one or two of the videos that I've seen have done that. So same thing again. The majority of people are doing the bend at the 10th fret and then going down and playing pentatonics. She took a bit of a liberty there. She did some trilling actually, which is new for today. That's really interesting. Her backing track. First off, this is a pretty professional level video, which makes sense. This is someone who's got a lot of subscribers, but that backing track was from a cover of Stairway, because that was clearly not Robert Plant singing at the end. It is interesting, the backing tracks that people choose. It seems like most people use the same backing track, which is the one that fades out at the end of the solo. I don't know where people get these. I mean, my backing track, of course, I made that one myself. Let's see, I want to do a cutoff, so let me just do one more. Let's see what we've got. 143 videos. Yeah, I'll just end it with Gabriel. He's the lucky final contestant of this experiment. Been recording for 1 hour and 43 minutes, so this is going to be a long one. Let's see how this goes. I think I have finally encountered the pro that I've been hoping to see so far, because everything he's been playing has been spot on, except his audio is not synced to the video, which actually makes it much more difficult. But from what I've seen and from what I've heard, he has played these first two lines exactly the same way that I would, and we're off to a very good start. So I'm really hoping that this carries on, because I want at least one person today to play like a cover of the solo that really, really, really impresses me. I probably spoke too soon. He played two deviations that I don't think are liberties. I think he made a mistake somewhere down there. And then when he did the slide up again, I think he missed a note or two, which I think a lot of people tend to do. So let's see how this next part goes. That's the first part that has, things are starting to deviate from what I would like to see. What he did right there, where he just jumped up positions instead of bending, right? That's what you're supposed to do. You bend 15 and then you bend 15 again. But instead he completely jumped up and did like a hammer-on pull-off thing, which puts you out of position and forces you to get back into position. That's caused things to get a little bit weird. And again, he has not done this part correctly, so he hasn't played it up here on the 17th fret, which has caused him to, again, I wasn't paying attention earlier, but maybe hasn't been using his pinky to bend things, but I think he did. He bent with his pinky at the beginning of the solo, but he hasn't picked it up near the end, which has forced him to shift his whole hand out of position and thus play in a way that is not accurate. Everybody is doing this. I don't know why everybody's doing this. They're bending this 10th fret and then they're climbing down, which I would say 90% of the videos I did today played it like this, which is a shock to me that it's not on the second string with the pentatonics, but maybe that's a new paradigm. People have figured out it's very difficult to bend from here if you want to play the pentatonics down there. So what you do is you bend on the 10th fret and then you awkwardly work your pentatonics down to the 5th fret, which it's a sad way to finish this video. So took some liberties at the end. He's using the same backing track as all the other people, which is, I don't know how people get that, but I guess you just Google Stairway to Heaven free backing track and that's how you get it. Anyway, yeah, so I guess it's time for me to give my closing thoughts, or is it? If we're talking about Stairway to Heaven covers, I think there's one more video we need to review. It's this one, Stairway to Heaven 50th Anniversary Guitar Solo Reproduction. So right off the bat, I can tell this one's gonna be pretty spot on, because this guitarist has taken the time to even dress the part of Jimmy Page with a nice little rose blazer and shirtless on the inside. So let's see how this cover goes. So what do we see there? No phantom E. Bending with the pinky. And again, you do the slide early to get into the 12th fret position so you don't have to jump up. And again, no weird like jumping up, because like on the previous guitar player, we saw instead of bending the 15th fret, he jumped his hand up to play, and then he got back and then kind of lost his place. Barring the index finger, You can see that finger is pressed all the way across, and all three of these notes are held together. Zero people that I reviewed today did that. I should have counted how many videos I watched. I think it was close to like 20, right? So zero of them played the section like me. And you know what? This is one thing that I could be wrong. I don't know how Jimmy Page played this section, but this is the way that makes the most sense. I think it's the most efficient. And I think if people were more willing to use their pinky as they played, they wouldn't have to put themselves in the awkward situation of having to bend the second string all the way up, or having to do that weird crawling action to get down to the 5th fret. You know, you make it, by trying to make it easier on yourself by not using the pinky, you make it harder on yourself by having to come up with all these other creative solutions that are just much less efficient. And that's really kind of the takeaway with this whole thing. I think people make this solo harder to play than it actually is. And I'm not saying that it was easy for me to play it, honestly. I've been playing for 14 years up until this. This was take 50 out of an entire day, 3 hours worth of playing the solos. I would do like 10 takes, and then I would get one take that's good enough for YouTube. Because there's two, approaches, right? YouTube videos don't require the tightest standard. You hit record. Did I get all the notes? Was it close enough? All right, wonderful. Put it online. And that tends to be what we see with a lot of these players. Even someone really experienced like Jun626. His first version was very clean. It was very tight. His second version was not tight. I would say that it would be good enough for YouTube, but I was recording this for two reasons. I was recording this video for YouTube, but I was really recording for the purpose of my cover song, my 50th anniversary, where every note needed to be spot on, so those takes weren't good enough. I think a lot of scenarios of the solos we've seen, many of the mistakes wouldn't have been present if they were recording, just extra takes. But the perspective of someone who's doing a cover for YouTube is you don't want to spend 5 or 6 hours doing like one single guitar solo. It's not really a good use of time. You really just want to record until you hit one good take and you're done. And I would probably hit one take every 15 that I'd say was good enough for YouTube. But there would be like one tiny little error which required me to delete and start over. So I would record for an hour, listen back and hope it was good enough, realize it wasn't good enough, and then record for another hour, get another decent take. The reason why I want to go to this video is just because I think that this is a pretty funny story. I had recorded roughly 50 failed takes of Stairway to Heaven solos. Failed by my standard. I think the 3 good ones, good enough for YouTube's. I mean, those compared to what we saw today, the difference is night and day. But they just weren't good enough for what I needed for my cover. So I was done. My hand hurt way too much. This guitar just got back from the shop and the tension was super tight. In fact, there's a blatant mistake that I want to go back. So we're at 50 seconds. One of these bends right before the repetitive section, I don't quite get there. That one right there. It's not quite the pitch that I wanted to get to, but that's how I was able to empathize with Jun626's second video, because it seems like he was really struggling to get to exactly the note he wanted, and I just had that same experience. You can see how fresh these strings are. They're literally brand new, and I had not practiced on this guitar long enough for me to be able to comfortably hit those notes because the deadline was running short. This was 2 weeks. So November 7th, 2021 is the day that Led Zeppelin 4 was released. And I think I got this guitar back like 2 weeks before, and I really needed to get that guitar solo recorded for the cover. So these things kind of impede you, but so the story is I did 50 takes and my hand was really tired because I was unfamiliar with the guitar. I hadn't been used to playing it yet. And I was done for the day, and I wanted to save my strength for the next day. And then I just decided, you know what? I'm just going to do one more take just for fun. And something about that perspective made it much less stressful, because when I hit record, all the other times I felt like I would make mistakes by rushing. As I said before in a previous review of one of the other solos, thinking ahead too much about what I needed to play next, and just kind of like getting in my own head and putting myself in a position where I wasn't gonna play as smoothly as I needed to. And for this last take, it was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna play it. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. And once I laid that first lick down, God, let's just go to the beginning again. Once I laid that first lick down, something about the way the strings felt in my fingers told me that this was gonna be it. So at this moment in time, I knew that this was going to be the take. Something about this, like, it just felt like I was playing in slow motion. When I say I did 50 takes of the solo, a lot of those takes were discarded at this point, because this is the first, lick, right? It has to be perfect. And like, if the first bend didn't feel right, I would stop and start over. So I threw away tons and tons and tons of takes. Like, those weren't included in the 50. There's a lot of stopping and starting, stopping and starting, stopping and starting. Really, the takes that count are the ones that made it past the first lick. I probably started and stopped. I probably played this lick 100 or 200 times that day. And none of them ever felt right. It always felt like I was rushing or dragging, as Fletcher would say. But when I did this version, it just felt right. This was it. So the one thing you can see me compensate for actually is the bending on the 5th fret of the 2nd and 3rd string. That is a very, very subtle thing that Jimmy Page does on the recording. I think it's accidental. Like, it's just incidental. It's, there was no intent to bend those strings. That's just how he played it. But I was trying to match it. I forgot it the first time around, but I remembered it the second time around. So I'm going to go back and I want you to see how hard I wiggle the fretboard to recreate that. So that jerk of the neck right there on that second run, because I forgot it on the first run, was intentionally done just to get those slight bends on those two notes. At this point, I was feeling loose. There's a lot of things people do for videos, like, oh, I'm gonna move around and be all, I'm gonna rock out for the video. I think a couple of guys did that in the previous videos. This was just feeling the moment. So on the first pass of this video, I paused right here. I didn't play the final lick, and I did that kind of on purpose. The reason is, I remember at this point, realizing how good this performance was. Like, up until then, there really were no criticisms to make in the moment. Obviously, now that I look back at it, I think, there's a minor thing here. There was a missed, the bend didn't quite get it right there. I found out later I vibratoed one of the bends that I wasn't supposed to, so that makes me really sad. In this moment, I thought that I had nailed this 100%, and I knew for a fact this was the best cover of Stairway to Heaven solo ever done. And I was just going on in my head, do not miss this note. Do not miss this note. Don't hit the wrong fret. And just play this part right. Like, don't bend wrong, don't do the pull-offs wrong. Like, this is the easiest part of the entire solo, so please just get it right so I can be done with this. And there you go. You see the reaction? That was really just the frustration of having recorded so many takes and not getting it. and just the happiness that I did this one extra take at the end. Because if I hadn't done this take, I wouldn't have had this version. And at the end of the day, I am pretty proud of this version. I do think I rushed it a little bit. I did rush at the very end right there, but it wasn't enough for me to delete the take and start over again. So I was pretty happy with this. What you don't see at the rest of this is that I kept the recording going. First off, I took the guitar off, put it down, and I ripped this jacket off because it's really hot. Like, this was recorded in like September. Whatever material is on the inside of this jacket does not breathe at all, and I was dying. So I ripped that off, I threw it across the room, and then I realized I'm not done. There's still the part at the very end of the solo. Let me like actually go to it. So the part I'm talking about, by the way, this is the cover that I did, which, you know, my goal was to make this sound as close to the original as possible without vocals. And so the solo needed to be perfect. So this is the cover, the instrumental reproduction that I was trying to recreate. This is why the solo needed to be exactly perfect. Why the 3 versions that were good enough for YouTube were not good enough for me to put online, and I had to delete them because this needs to be spot on. The goal of this video is to create something that was note for note, 100% accurate to the original recording, except of course it doesn't have vocals. And at the very end of the song, there are these bends, right? And I recorded that in the same exact take. So as I'm shirtless, I put my guitar back on and I do these bends. And of course, you know, in my mindset, it's like that solo was so good, I need to record these bends perfectly on the same exact take. So it's like, I swear to God, I better get it right. And what I was doing is I was actually practicing it during the ending, like the last verse. So those bends were done on the same take as the solo, and I was surprised that I actually got them. I wasn't expecting that I would nail them, especially because the song slows down at the end. I thought I was gonna miss it, but I got it, and I was pretty happy. So anyway, that's it for this video. I've been recording for 2 hours. This is much longer than I was expecting. I thought it was gonna be an hour long and I'd get tired, but it's me, so I like to talk and I like to run on. I don't know how much I'm gonna edit this back end. I'm probably just gonna make it pretty loose, so you're gonna hear a bunch of my, you know, wandering thoughts and so on. But I hope somebody enjoys this video. I don't think anybody will. The only reason I'm making this video is because I feel like I kind of have to close everything off. I did promise in the previous video that I was gonna do this, and I've been kind of on and off about the idea, which is why there's been such a gap between these videos. But God, I'm so glad I'm finally done talking about Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo, because I've had this on my mind for way too long. Next video, we're going to talk about John Bonham. We're going to do the drums, because that's really awesome. And really, you know, who cares about the guitars? Everybody knows the guitar parts for Stairway to Heaven. Like, my tab, does it really introduce that much for the guitars? I think yes, because we saw how many people play it wrong. I guess I need to give my closing thoughts. It's pretty disappointing that of all the covers I saw today, none of them really, like, made me super happy. I guess a couple of the ones from the beginners, because, like, it's just nice to see people trying. I think the very first video, like, that was really good for kind of the spirit of what I was trying to achieve, because I didn't want to criticize people's playing abilities. So to see a guy that's a total beginner play, you know, try his hardest to play the solo, but actually, like, what he's playing is correct, that gives me hope, because I think that first guy, he's going to be really good, you know, when he actually gets to that, like, 5-year mark or so. He's going to be playing a really good version of Stairway to Heaven. There was the other beginner, the girl, I think her name was Julia. Just how much she was using her pinky, that makes me really happy, because I see these guys, all these other guitarists curl their hand in and like avoid using their pinky at all costs. And that, that upsets me, but it's great to see that there are beginner players out there using their pinky as much. At the end of the day, I'm pretty like not happy seeing these like consistently weird versions, especially that like sliding up on the second fret for lick number 2, the second string for lick number 2. That's such an awkward like way to play Stairway, and I can like any of the guys that played like that, none of them had really good takes, because to do that, it's just difficult. It's just not an efficient way to play guitar, and they're not in a mindset where, this is tough. Instead of figuring out a better way to play it, they just keep grinding that same method and putting themselves in a position where they're always going to struggle because the way they're playing the lick is just not the best way to play. So that's a little bit disappointing. A lot of Phantom E's, probably 30%, or maybe even a third. So a third of the solos had Phantom E's, which is not surprising. I expect anywhere from 25 to 40% of people to play Phantom E's because it's just the most common mistake in Stairway to Heaven. And there are aesthetic choices you can make. It's like, okay, if you don't want to use your pinky and you want to play easier pentatonics, that's fine, because at the end of the day, the notes sound the same. The Phantom E is just such a blatant error that that upsets me the most. What made me happy is that Jin626 had it on his first video, but was able to correct it 8 years later. So none of you are going to get to this part anyway. That's probably the only part that most people are going to see. So I'm glad I was able to showcase that. And then the other video by the guy, I think his name was Morris. I think that's a really great Stairway to Heaven video. And it's a shame it doesn't have a lot of views because there's no actual video. It's audio only. I think if he had the foresight to record a video, that should be considered the best Stairway cover. Of course, that's not this one, aside from this one. So there it is, Stairway to Heaven's guitar solo.